Chapter 19 of the Opal Serpent by Fergus Hume. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Captain Jessop. Apparently Matilda Junk was quite ignorant of anything being wrong about her ladies, although she did shirk the question regarding their possible visit to London in July. However, Hurd had learned that Grexon Hay was not only an old friend, but had been engaged to Maud for many months. This information made him the more certain that Hay had robbed Beecot of the opal brooch at the time of the accident, and that it had passed from Mr. Hay's hands into those of the assassin. "I wonder if Mrs. Krill murdered her husband in that cruel way," thought the detective, sitting over his tea. "But what could have been her object? She could have gone up on learning from Hay that Aaron Norman was her husband, as I believe she did, and could then have made him give her the money, by threatening him with the murder of Lady Rachel. I dare say Aaron Norman, in his Krill days, did strangle that lady to get the opal brooch, and his wife could have used what she knew to govern him. There was no need of murder. I'll see about getting the truth out of Hay. Aurora," he cried. "Oh, there you are," he added, as she entered the room. "I want you to go back to town this night." "What for, Billy?" "Can you get Hay into trouble?" Aurora nodded. "I have proofs of his cheating Lord George and others, if that's what you mean," she said. "But you didn't want them used." "Nor do I. He is such an eel, he may wriggle out of our clutches. But can't you give a party and invite Lord George and Hay, and then get them to play cards? Should Hay cheat, denounce him to George Sandal." "What good would that do?" asked Miss Qian, with widely open eyes. "It will make Hay confess about the brooch to save himself from public shame. His reputation is his life, remember, and if he is caught red-handed cheating, he'll have to clear out of town." "Pooh, as if that mattered. He's going to marry Miss Krill, if Miss Krill keeps the money, and I doubt if she will." "But Billy " "Never mind. Don't ask me any more questions, but go and pack. This Captain Jessop is in the bar drinking. I may probably have to arrest him. I got a warrant on the chance of finding him here. I can arrest him on suspicion, and won't let him go until I get at the truth. Your business is to bring Hay to his knees and get the truth out of him about the Opal Serpent. You know the case." "Yes," grumbled Aurora, "I know the case, but I don't like this long journey tonight." "Every moment is precious. If I arrest Jessop, Matilda Junk will tell her ladies, who will speak to Hay, and then he may slip away. As the brooch evidence is so particular, and as I believe he can give it, if forced, you can see the importance of losing no time." Miss Qian nodded and went away to pack. She wanted money, and knew Billy would give her a goodly share of the reward. In a few minutes Miss Junk, of the Red Pig, learned that Miss Qian was suddenly summoned to town, and would leave in an hour. Quite unsuspectingly, she assisted her to pack, and shortly Aurora was driving in a hired vehicle to the railway station on her way to trap Grexon Hay. When she was safely off the premises, Hurd walked to the telegraph office and sent a cipher message to the Yard, asking for a couple of plainclothes policemen to be sent down. He wanted to have Hokar and Miss Matilda Junk watched, also the house, in case Mrs. Krill and her daughter should return. Captain Jessop he proposed to look after himself, but he was in no hurry to make that gentleman's acquaintance, as he intended to arrest him quietly in the sitting room after dinner. Already he had informed Matilda that he would ask a gentleman to join him at the meal and taste Hokar's curry. The thought of the curry brought the Indian to his mind, and when he got back to the Red Pig, he strolled round the house, inspecting the place, but in reality keeping eyes and ears open to talk to the Hindoo. Thinking he might meet the man some time, Hurd had carefully learned a few phrases relating to Thuggism, in English of course, since he knew nothing of the Indian tongues. These he proposed to use in the course of conversation with Hokar and watched the effect. Soon he found the man sitting cross-legged under a tree in the yard smoking. Evidently his work for the day was over, and he was enjoying himself. Remembering the description given by Bart, the detective saw that this was the very man who had entered the shop of Aaron Norman. He wore the same dress and looked dirty and disreputable, quite a waif and a stray. "Hello," said Hurd casually. "What are you doing? Talk English, eh?" "Yes, sir," said Hokar calmly. "I spike good Inglis. Missionary teach Hokar Inglis." "I'm glad of that. We can have a chat," said Hurd, producing his pipe. He also produced something else, with which he had provided himself on the way back from the post office. In another minute Hokar was staring at a small parcel of coarse brown sugar. With all his oriental phlegm, the man could not keep his countenance. His eyes rolled until they threatened to drop out of his head, and he looked at Hurd with a certain amount of fear. "Gore," said that gentleman, pointing to the sugar with the stem of his pipe. "Gore." Hokar turned green under his dark skin, and half rose to go away, but his legs failed him, and he sat still, trying to recover himself. "So you worship Bhowanee," went on his tormentor. The Indian's face expressed lively curiosity. "The great goddess." "Yes, Kalee. You know. Did you make Tupounee after you used your roomal on Aaron Norman?" Hokar gave a guttural cry and gasped. "Tupounee is the sacrifice made by the Thugs after a successful crime, and roomal the handkerchief with which they strangle their victims. All this was information culled from Colonel Meadow Taylor's book by the accomplished detective." "Well," said Hurd, smoking placidly, "what have you to say, Mr. Hokar?" "I know nothing," said the man, sullenly but in deadly fear. "Yes, you do. Sit still," said Hurd, with sudden sternness. "If you try to run away I'll have you arrested. Eyes are on you, and you can't take a step without my knowing." Some of this was Greek to the Indian, owing to his imperfect knowledge of English, but he understood that the law would lay hold of him if he did not obey the sahib, and so sat still. "I know not anything," he repeated, his teeth chattering. "Yes, you do. You're a Thug." "Is there no Thugs?" "I agree with you," said Hurd. "You are the last of the Mohegans. I want to know why you offered Aaron Norman to Bhowanee." Hokar made a strange sign on his forehead at the mention of the sacred name, and muttered something, perhaps a prayer, in his native tongue. Then he looked up. "I know nothing." "Don't repeat that rubbish," said Hurd calmly. "You sold bootlaces in the shop in Gwynne Street on the day when its master was killed, and he was the husband of the lady who helped you, Mrs. Krill." "You say dat," said Hokar, stolidly. "Yes, and I can prove it. The boy Tray, and I can lay my hands on him, saw you, also Bert Tawsey, the shopman. You left a handful of sugar, though why you did so instead of eating it I can't understand." Hokar's face lighted up, and he showed his teeth disdainfully. "Oh, you sahibs know nothing," said he, spreading out his lean brown hands. "The shop as yes, I there is. But I no use roomal." "Not then, but you did later." Hokar shook his head. "I use no roomal. Sat sahib one eye. Bad, very bad. Bhowanee no have one eye. No Bhungees, no Bats, no." "What are you talking about?" said Hurd, angrily. His reading had not told him that no maimed person could be offered to the goddess of the Thugs. Bhunge meant sweepers, and Bhats bards, both of which classes were spared by the stranglers. "You killed that man. Now, who told you to kill him?" "I know nossing. I no kill. Bhowanee no take one eyed mans." For want of an interpreter, Hurd found it difficult to carry on the conversation. He rose and determined to postpone further examination till he would get someone who understood the Hindu tongue. But in the meantime Hokar might run away, and Hurd rather regretted that he had been so precipitate. However, he nodded to the man and went off, pretty sure he would not fly at once. Then Hurd went to the village police office and told a bucolic constable to keep his eye on Miss Junk's foreigner, as he learned Hokar was called. The policeman, a smooth-faced individual, promised to do so after Hurd produced his credentials and sauntered towards the Red Pig at some distance from the detective's heels. A timely question about the curry revealed by the mouth of Miss Junk that Hokar was still in the kitchen. "But he do seem alarmed like," said Matilda, laying the cloth. "Let's hope he won't spoil the curry," remarked Hurd. Then, knowing Hokar was safe, he went into the bar to make the acquaintance of his other victim. Captain Jarvey Jessop quite answered to the description given by Pash. He was large and sailor-like, with red hair mixed with gray, and a red beard that scarcely concealed the scar running from temple to mouth. He had drunk enough to make him cheerful, and was quite willing to fall into conversation with Hurd, who explained himself unnecessarily. "I'm a commercial agent," said the detective, "calling for 2 rums, plain, and I like talking." "Me too," growled the sailor, grasping his glass. "I'm here on what you'd call a visit, but I go back to my home tomorrow. Then it's ho for Callao," he shouted in a sing-song voice. Hurd knew the fierce old chanty, and sized Captain Jarvey up at once. He was of the buccaneer type, and there was little he would not do to make money and have a roaring time. Failing Hokar with his deadly handkerchief, here was the man who might have killed Aaron Norman. "Drink up," shouted Hurd in his turn. "We'll have some more." "Oh, no condition is extradition allowed in Callao." "Gum," said Captain Jessop. "You know the chanty." Hurd winked. "I've been round about in my time." Jessop stretched out a huge hand. "Put it there, mate," said he, with a roar like a foghorn, "and drink up along with me. My treat." Hurd nodded and became jovial. "On condition you join me at dinner. They make good curries here." "I've had curry," said Captain Jessop heavily, "in Colombo and Hong Kong frequent. But Hokar's curries are the best." "Ah," said Hurd, in a friendly, curious way. "So you know this shanty?" Jessop looked at him with contempt. "Know this shanty?" said he, with a grin. "Why, in course I do. I've been swinging my hammock here, time in and out, for the last 30 years." "You be a Christchurch man, then?" "Not me, mate. I'm Buckinghamshire, Stowley born." Hurd with difficulty suppressed a start. Stowley was the place where the all-important brooch had been pawned by a nautical man, and here was the man in question. "I should have thought you lived near the sea," he said cautiously. "Say Southampton." "Oh, I used to go there for my ship," said the captain, draining his glass, "but I don't go there no more." "Retired, eh?" Jessop nodded and looked at his friend, as he considered Hurd since the invitation to dinner, with a bloodshot pair of eyes. "Come storm, come calm," he growled, "I've sailed the ocean for 40 years. Yes, sir, you bet. I was a slip of a 15 cabin boy on my first cruise, and then I got on to being skipper. Lord," Jessop smacked his knee, "the things I've seen." "We'll have them tonight after dinner," said Hurd, nodding. "But now I suppose you've made your fortune." "No," said the captain gloomily, "not what you'd call money. I've got a standby, though," and he winked. "Ah, married to a rich wife?" "Not me. I've had enough of marriage, having been the skipper of a mermaid with a tongue. No, sir," he roared out another line of some song floating in his muzzy head. "A saucy bachelor am I," then changed to gruff talk, "and I intends being one all my days. Stand by I have. 'Tain't a wife, but I can draw the money regular and no questions asked." Again he winked and drank another glass. Hurd reflected that perhaps Jessop had killed Aaron Norman for Mrs. Krill. and she was paying him blood money. But he did not dare to press the question, as Jessop was coming perilously near what the Irish call the cross drop. He therefore proposed an adjournment to the sitting room. Jessop agreed quite unsuspectingly, not guessing he was being trapped. The man was so large and uncouth that Hurd felt behind his waist to see that his revolver was loose and could be used should the occasion arise. Miss Junk brought in the dinner with her own fair hands, and explained that Hokar had made the curry, but she didn't think it was as good as usual. "The man's shaking like a jelly," said Matilda. "I don't know why." The detective nodded, but did not encourage conversation. He was quite sure that Hokar was being watched by the smooth faced policeman, and could not get away. Besides, he wished to talk to Captain Jessop. Miss Junk, seeing that she was not needed, retreated after bringing in the curry, and left the gentlemen to help themselves. So here was Hurd in a pleasant room, seated before a well spread table, with a roaring fire at his back, waiting his opportunity to make Captain Jarvey Jessop confess his share in the dual murders of Lady Rachel Sandal and Aaron Norman. Chapter 19.